His name has become a legend in college football, and the team he coached to 232 victories inspires respect and fear from fans and enemies alike. But his greatest victory came when he successfully integrated the Alabama football team. Paul Bear Bryant, as he would be known to his admirers, would preside over a turbulent time in the history of Alabama football, and for that matter, Alabama. Bryant's leadership during this time can be credited with changing the face of Southern football forever by bringing the Crimson Tide into the modern era of collegiate athletics. One does not need to look far to see the number of African Americans now playing for SEC schools across the South. The 42-21 defeat of Alabama against the University of Southern California would forever change the attitudes of Alabamians towards black athletes. The stellar performance of USC running back Sam Cunningham, a black athlete from Mobile, would not go unnoticed by Bear Bryant, or for that matter, the fans of the Crimson Tide. Sam Cunningham, Bryant is rumored to have remarked, did more for civil rights in one afternoon than Martin Luther King Jr. did in a decade. The University of Alabama won the national championship in 1961, 64, and 65 with all-white teams. The knowledge that his teams were held up as a symbol of white supremacy angered Bryant, but for years he felt there was little he could do. In the early 1960s, he began telling people that he was considering running for public office. He intended this as a signal to Governor Wallace and his most ardent supporters, but nothing tangible came of the talk. But Bryant was hesitant to openly defy Wallace if it might hurt the University of Alabama. The 1966 season sent out a message that no one in Alabama could ignore. Jim Murray, a columnist for the LA Times, would be responsible for writing a series of articles that portrayed Alabama in a negative manner given its recent troubles on the issue of civil rights. In 1969 and 1970, Alabama won just 12 of 23 games, its worst showing since Bryant became head coach. Before the start of the 1970 season, Bryant decided to take the initiative. At a January coaches meeting, he ran into his friend John McKay, the head coach of the University of Southern California Trojans, one of college football's most celebrated, integrated teams. The two men talked about setting up a series between their schools. The NCAA would allow an extra game for the 1970 and 1971 seasons. A few months later, their plan was set. The Trojans would play in Birmingham to open the 1970 season, and Alabama would return the favor in Los Angeles the following autumn. Bryant must have known that his talent-deficient Tide team was no match for Southern Cal, and that proved to be the case. USC's two great black running backs, Sam the Bam Cunningham, who scored 3 touchdowns that afternoon, and Clarence Davis, who had been born in Birmingham, ran all over Alabama for a crushing 42-21 victory. The one-sidedness of the defeat shocked many Alabamians, and Bryant was confident that they received the proper message. The legend persists that Bryant went into Southern Cal's locker room, shook hands with Sam Cunningham, and proceeded to take him into the Alabama locker room, where he announced, "Gentlemen, this is what a football player looks like." Bryant did go to the USC locker room to congratulate Cunningham, but the rest is fiction. The Alabama players didn't need to be told that the Tide had to integrate. It was the diehards in the university administration who needed the message, and Southern Cal had delivered it dearly and forcibly. What Alabama fans didn't yet know was that Bryant had already crossed the color line. Sitting on the bench that day was the university's first black scholarship player, Wilbur Jackson. That winter, Bryant was playing golf with John McKay in California when the Southern Cal coach mentioned a great black prospect from Alabama named John Mitchell, who was playing for a junior college in Arizona. McKay made a remark, something along the lines of, "It's a shame you can't be signing kids like him." In fact, McKay didn't know that Bryant was already working hard at getting kids like John Mitchell. Over the decade, John Mitchell would join a host of black players who would go on to play for the Tide. Besides having been stars for the Crimson Tide, these players would go on to shape the history of Alabama football and Southern football in ways they could never imagine while serving under the greatest coach in football history, Paul Bear Bryant.